Welcome, everybody. I am so excited to have you all here. So I'm so excited for this partnership that we are launching between the Petey Greene Program and the Global Freedom Fellowships that we are going to describe in a second. First of all, let me introduce myself. I am Chiara Benetolo. I am the Executive Director of the Puttkamer Center for Educational Justice and Equity at the Petey Greene Program. The Petey Greene Program is a U.S. organization that recruits, trains, and manages volunteers who go and provide tutoring and college readiness programs for incarcerated people. We are currently in 7 states and Washington, D.C., serving about 2,000 students every year. And with the Puttkamer Center, our goal is to focus more on research and be able to really demonstrate the impact that our programs can have on incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people. I'm delighted to be joined by an amazing group of panelists and speakers and interpreters. I'm going to start from my co-host in this group, asking that they introduce themselves and talk about the work, the Global Freedom Fellowship and Incarceration Nations Network, and then we will go on to present our panelists. So I have here with me Baz and whose names I surely butchered. So please go ahead, introduce yourselves, tell us about your work, and then we will move on to the panelists and their interpreters.
Thank you so much, Chiara. I'll just say it's wonderful to be here today. It's great to see everyone's beautiful face, and thank you to the attendees. So I am Baz Dreisinger, founder and executive director of Incarceration Nations Network, or INN, as we like to call it. INN is a global prison reform and justice reimagining network. We are a network of 134 partners in more than 40 countries, doing a host of work in the space of justice reform and justice reimagining. Everything from education behind bars programs to restorative justice to broad-reaching policy and advocacy work to legal reform work, the whole gamut. And we work to connect our partners with each other and with the world in a host of creative ways. We are very passionate about education, not incarceration, and do a lot of work around building prison university partnerships globally. So it's especially wonderful to partner with the Petey Greene Program on this webinar series. This will be the first of several. And one of our flagship programs at INN is the Global Freedom Fellowship. An incredible program, experience, life-changing, transnational experience. And so I will pass the mic to my dear family and comrade, MT, who he'll share more about his name. But MT is our team leader for South Africa as an organization. INN is based between New York, South Africa, and the world. And MT is our team leader for South Africa, as well as the project coordinator for the Global Freedom Fellowship. So my dear comrade, MT, the floor is yours.
And stuff like that. Greetings to everyone. Thank you, Chiara. Yes, my name is Mtheteleli Nceke. I've got 2 names, basically. My name means advocate, and the second one, it means advisor. But the one that I always like to be called is MT, which it makes it easy. It makes me look famous as well. I'm a project coordinator for the Incarceration Nations Network for the Global Freedom Fellowship here in South Africa. And I'm a person with a lived experience, spent 13 years in prison, and joined INN in 2022, of which it was a great and a great experience for me to be working for this organization and be a global citizen, no longer local. So we've got a Global Freedom Fellowship that brings leaders from around the world. You know, we had one last year, and then we had another one in this year, which ended in March, where we have collaborations that has come out as a result. This year we covered 13 countries. Last year we covered 10 countries, with all these leaders learning from each other and collaborate, of which some of the comrades that are here are part of the fellowship, you know. So yeah, I'm excited for the journey with Petey Greene. You know, I've been looking on the Google, what is Petey Greene, you know, just checking where they're coming from, which is quite interesting to find myself in this space, you know, and I'm looking forward to greater relationships, you know. So with that being said, thank you. Back to you, Kiara.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm also really excited to be in this very international call in true international fashion. We have people who speak English and Portuguese and Spanish in the call, and like Baz said, this is the first of a series. So in true first of a series fashion, we are having some challenges with interpretation, so we're going to all hear a bit of Spanish and a bit of Portuguese in the call, and we're going to leave some time to the wonderful interpreters to translate or summarize what we say in English for our participants who speak other languages. So I'm going to pause for a second here to give Joao the opportunity to translate a little bit for Danielle what we just said, just so everybody is in the loop.
Yeah, hi. I was just thinking of maybe another strategy. I think I'm gonna call Daniel through WhatsApp so that I can translate through WhatsApp,
Okay.
so that it doesn't pause the call for me to translate to him.
Amazing.
What everyone said, yeah. But when it's his time to talk, I'll just jump in and translate to English.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for the
you.
quick thinking. So I will just keep going and introduce our panelists. Today, I'm really excited to talk about women and carceral systems around the world, the impact that carceral systems are having and have on women and their communities in the different countries that we have represented, but also the initiatives and the ways in which women are organizing to fight against unjust carceral systems, to change those systems. So without further ado, let me introduce our panelists, starting from Beatrice, I will let her pronounce her last name, who is the founder of the Restorative Justice Association for Women in Zambia. She is an avid advocate for the abolition of the death penalty, a fierce advocate for women's right. And Beatrice, if you could please just pronounce your entire name, that would be wonderful.
Hello, my name is Beatrice Hangwende. I spent 13 years, 6 months in prison. I was on death row. My sentence was reduced to life, then reduced to 20 years. Then I was pardoned to come out. I started Restorative Justice for Women in 2019. It was challenging. It was the first time ever in Zambia for inmates to start an organization inside. But we thank God, everything went well. We were allowed to register in 2019. Hence, we started this Restorative Justice for Women. After I saw the challenges that I went through myself, I'm a mother of 3, 2 girls, 1 boy, and I encountered so many challenges. In my 13 years, 6 months, I spent 7 years as a remandee, going back and from court until I was sentenced in 2013 to death row. I was in Lusaka Central Correctional Service. I was moved to Kabwe Correctional Maximum Prison, where I spent some time. I was also, after my death penalty, it was something that I felt when I came out, really, I couldn't walk away and just forget about the women that I left behind. Incarceration in Africa it's so challenging. It's something out of this world. The challenges that the women face, I really gave myself that I'm going to speak for them, advocate, fight for the abolition of the death penalty, which was done. Thank God our president spent some time in prison before he became president. Just a few months after serving his death penalty, he became president. And he's made so many changes. We thank God that right now, the death penalty is been abolished in Zambia because our president was on a death row, serving a death row. And it has been abolished, but they still have to pass it through parliament to make it legal. They are still sentencing people to death penalty, but we are just waiting for ratification in parliament. And we thank God. My experience.
Oh, I'm sorry, Peters. I'm going to cut you off for a second so we can introduce the other panelists. But thank you for sharing more about your story and the incredibly important work that that you're doing. And I just want to introduce everybody, and then I'll come back to you and to everybody with a few questions so that I can leave you more space to talk about your work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And our second panelist is Nicholas Khan. He learned to read in prison and was inspired by the work of Tupac Shakur. He found passion for poetry this way. He began publishing his poetry and his writing during incarceration. And currently, he is an ambassador for the Link Up program, a prison to college pipeline initiative through the College of Science, Technology, and Applied Arts in Trinidad, where he founded the first spoken word poetry club. So Nicholas, thank you for joining us. If you want to share a few more words about yourself and your story and your work before we move on to introduce our final panelists.
Good day, everyone. Everybody hear me, right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Khan. At the age of 17, I was sent to prison. I spent 15 years in prison. And as a radio learner, I published 2 books while in prison. In 2023, I was released from prison, and I'm reintegration coordinator for COSTAT. And the work I do is to help persons get the access to education within the college and even entrepreneurship, which we are about to start on the 25th of this month. I work closely with an NGO called Vision and a Mission. They work with formerly incarcerated, and even persons who are deported from countries. I also work closely with INN, Incarceration Nations Network, and I'm also just doing the work, yes, having a passion for helping persons like myself come out to help them back on their feet and give them the support I get. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nicholas. And our last but not least is Danielle Diaz, who is an anti-racist social educator, a member of the Human Rights Defenders Network. He's graduating in education at the State University of Rio de Janeiro. He's a panel abolitionist who believes in transformation through good books. So Danielle, please tell us a little bit more about yourself. We will hear Daniel introduce himself in Portuguese, and then Joao, I'll ask you to translate.
Hello, my name is Daniel.
Olá, meu nome é Oh, sorry. Hello, my name is Daniel. I was like Portuguese, English.
Eu sou uma pessoa trans destransicionada.
I'm a trans person who got detransitioned.
Me considero um afro-latino-americano.
Yeah, I consider myself an Afro-Latino American.
Estou como brasileiro.
Yeah, I am Brazilian.
Sou egresso do sistema penal, sobrevivente carcerário,
I'm a formerly incarcerated person, a survivor of the prison system,
ao qual fiquei preso num período de 5 anos.
where I stayed there for 5 years.
Hoje estudo licenciatura em pedagogia pela Universidade do Estado do Rio de Janeiro.
Today I'm studying education at the State University of Rio de Janeiro.
Sou integrante da Rede de Defensores de Direitos Humanos e Promoção da Saúde do Estado do Rio de Janeiro.
I'm part of the Human Rights Defenders and Promotion of the Health Network of Rio.
Estou cursando Tecnologia em Educação Social.
I'm also doing a course in social education technology.
Sou membro do Diálogo do Cárcere, que é um projeto de extensão na minha faculdade,
I'm also a member of an extension project in my university in Rio called
que tem uma
Diálogos do
atuação
Cárcere, which
com,
means conversations about prison.
que tem uma atuação com trabalho educacional dentro de uma das unidades prisionais masculinas.
That works, this extension project works inside a men's prison in Rio.
Hoje tenho dedicado a minha vida pensando e refletindo a partir das questões relacionadas ao sistema penal e à invisibilidade das identidades transfemininas dentro das prisões masculinas em âmbito global.
And today I'm trying to center my work related to the prison system, of course, but also having in mind and taking into consideration trans people, trans women inside who are incarcerated inside men's prison in Brazil and globally.
Sou bolsista do programa Global Freedom Fellowship,
Yeah, I'm a fellow from the Global Freedom Fellowship program at INM.
pelo Incarceration Nations Network,
Yeah, through Incarceration Nations Network,
onde eu tive a oportunidade de viajar pela África do Sul, sendo um dos únicos brasileiros, junto com mais de 14 líderes sociais de outros países.
where I had the opportunity to go to South Africa and travel around South Africa, where I was the only Brazilian in a group of 14 people.
Onde eu vivenciei sobre incidências fora e dentro das prisões, discutindo sobre sessões de solução e realizando algumas visitas às unidades prisionais da África do Sul.
Where we had the opportunity to talk about prisons and the prison system, to visit some prison units, and also where we had solution sessions to talk about the future and what we can do.
E isso tudo me gerou hoje que eu posso dizer que eu sou o cofundador do Instituto Mamatula, que é o meu novo instituto,
Yeah, and today I say that I'm the co-founder of my new institute, which is called Institute Mamatula.
Que recentemente a gente está se estruturando como uma organização social civil.
And we are recently getting structured as a civil society organization.
E temos desenvolvido um trabalho de apoio educacional na Associação de Moradores da Favela do Mandela do Estado do Rio de Janeiro.
And we've been developing a social work to support people at the Mandela favela in Rio.
Com os filhos e filhas das mulheres sobreviventes do cárcere, que de alguma forma foram afetadas pelas políticas de violência do nosso Estado.
Yeah, and the work we do there is to support the kids of people who have been or are incarcerated in Rio and that have been affected by violence from the state.
Thank
Onde a
you.
gente desenvolve.
Well, I'm
Oh.
going to also thank you, Danielle. Thank you for sharing more about yourself and your work. I want to open the floor to some questions for all of the panelists so that we can get to explore the work that all of your wonderful organizations are doing. Joe, do you need to translate or you got this?
I'm doing it through WhatsApp on a call with him, so
Okay.
it's okay.
Awesome. Thank you. So it was great to hear about all of your stories and the organizations that you're funded, that you're leading, that you're part of, the studies that we that you are doing. I think, Nicholas, you're a poet. And I think we were thinking of having you open our conversation by reading one of your poems. So I'd love to ask you to do just that now.
All right. Everybody can, am I right?
Yes, we can.
All right. In confined school, where spirits live, women in prison, their voices grim. Societies change, they bear with pain, yearning for freedom to reclaim their reign. Their families torn, a bitter plight, connections severed, cast in darkest night. Visits infrequent, a cruel decree, denying solace, their hearts to decree. But within their souls, a flicker still burns, a longing for release, where their spirit yearns. To build back society, they have a role, to mend the broken, to make hearts whole. Let us break the barriers, shatter the wall, set women freed, heed their desperate cause. For in their embrace, our future lies, a society rebuilt where justice applies. Connect them with loved ones, let their spirits soar, nurture their bonds forevermore. With families beside with them, strong and true, they'll rise from darkness, their light anew. Unveil the shadows, let compassion reign, women in prison, their freedom to gain. For in their redemption, society thrives, a brighter future where hope survives.
Thank you, Nicholas. That was really beautiful, and I'm such a privilege to get to hear from those voices. Baz.
Yes, Kiara, I just wanted, sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to ask Nicholas if he could share a bit about the work that we're doing. I know that poem is inspired by some of the work that we're doing in the women's prison in Trinidad. So I wanted to
Yeah,
ask if Nicholas could share a bit about that work and also the plight of some of those women that we're working with.
hi. Dr. Baz and myself, alongside a musician by the name of Etienne Charles, and also another musician by the name of Rian Elbon, we have been visiting the women's prison specifically um, to just hear their experience and learn from them and create art with it. And we've been able to create two songs with the women just sharing their experience, whether it was a line or two, and compile all 15 women in the classroom to create, you know, these beautiful songs and just hearing their experience and expressions through that media. It really did a lot for them. It really did a lot for them where they keep asking when we coming back, and it have one young lady in particular who have like 16 classes that she came to my prison and she really want to study law. And even outside, I've met three women 3 days ago because we have link up starting on the 25th of this month, and I've been wanting to have a balance within the group where I was only seeing men and I needed to see women. So I have some women coming onto the program. So we've been working closely with the women, especially within the prison.
Thank you so much, and sounds like amazing work that you're doing. That's something that we at the Petey Greene Program have also tried to do. We know that women's facilities are often underserved. All facilities are underserved, but women facilities are especially lacking in services and support and creative programs that are so vital to everybody who is incarcerated. And for that reason, we really wanted to kick off our series of panel with this population. Half of the world population, and yet incredibly underserved in this space. And that's actually the perfect segue for the first question that I had for all of our panelists, that is, can you tell us a bit more about the situation of women in carceral facilities, in prisons and jails in your countries, and the spaces that you know more generally? How are women impacted by criminal legal systems in your countries? And in this, you know, with this, I'd also love to hear more about the reality of trans women in the prisons of their countries, a population that is even further marginalized among you know, within this marginalized population. So whoever wants to kick us off.
One of the most glaring issues is the excessive use of remand, which has resulted in women being held in prison for more than 10 years before their cases are even brought to trial. This is a clear violation for their basic right and have a devastating impact on their lives. Furthermore, women impacted by the criminal legal system in our country, Trinidad and Tobago, often face significant barriers to accessing bail and support on the outside. This is due to lack of legal aid, financial constraint, and discrimination based on gender and socio-economic status. As a result, women are forced to remain in prison despite presumed innocent, and most of the time, women plead guilty just to have a date to come out. The consequence of this situation are dire. Women in prison are more likely to experience physical and mental health problems, trauma, loss of employment, and housing. They also face significant challenges in integrating into society upon their release. So, like when I was explaining earlier, like I went and visited 3 women to join the program, and it was challenging for me to really encourage them to join because they've been promised a lot even when they came out of prison, and they wanted to join something that it would start now and then after 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months down the road is no more. You know, it had no follow up behind it. So it really played with the mental, and I believe it is imperative that we take immediate action to address this crisis. You know.
Thank you. Thank you. And yes, Baz, you can you add some context to additional context to that?
Yeah, I was just going to add that pretrial detention is certainly a crisis everywhere in the world, but it's just worth noting that in Trinidad, the average wait for trial, male or female, is 6 years. So you're talking about a crisis of real magnitude, and almost all of the women incarcerated are awaiting trial. Most of the women in our group are women who are in there 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. The woman whom Nicholas just spoke of is on her 7th year and was just denied bail again. And so, yeah, it's a tremendous issue.
And it kind of biased for to be denied bail because the men, they will always tell me the men getting bail and the women not getting bail. And why is that? You know, and not to measure anyone's crimes, but I believe a woman will be more likely to access bail over a man, and it's the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we're seeing, and I also saw a comment from our audience that women prisons are under-resourced. The access to education is not fully supported in South Africa either. It's very difficult to find empowerment for yourself when you are in this kind of facility. So it's great to hear. I mean, very sad to hear, obviously, about the dire situation of women across different countries. Great to hear from the audience. Please keep it coming. If you have other thoughts or questions, we can read the chat. I'd love to hear from Beatrice about the situation in Zambia. If you see continuity with what the situation that Nicholas has described for Trinidad, and what's your experience there?
Thank you very much, comrade. I want first to start by thanking Dr. Baz and thanking MT and all my colleagues on the 2024 Global Fellowship. Thank you. It was an amazing time. I learned a lot, and it was like coming out of this dark place where I was. Since I came out of prison, I was hiding. I was scared even to come out of the house. It was such an experience. What women are going through in prison, it's unbelievable. There's no, the education system, it's more, I've got nothing against men, but it was like in Zambia, prisons were built for men. To access anything, you have to go to male section. There's nothing at female section. A family, a home, every person on this earth was born from a woman. And a woman is a very, very important person in anyone's life. But to find women being treated the way women are being treated here, it was something that is never left me. And I've vouched to fight for the women. It's unbelievable that women have got no access to education. We've got no computers, no laptops at female section. We've got those things at male section. It's unbelievable. I'm so embarrassed half the time. I remember when I went to South Africa, MT was saying, when we were having the meeting, he thought maybe I could turn my phone upside down. It's unbelievable. The time I went into prison, we're using the phones, not the latest ones that, you know. When I came out, I couldn't even make a phone call on my own phone. They had to show me how to make a phone call. Unbelievable. Women are being incarcerated because of ignorance. This is why I thank Dr. Baz for this project that we are embarking on of bringing Kenan from Uganda, from Justice Defenders, to come and really inspire, to talk to women. It's so scary to go into court when you've got no idea what to talk about. So we are embarking on this Justice Defenders to train women to be able to speak in court. Like the previous comrade that spoke, you just go to court, you just want to admit so you can leave court and go back to prison. And yet, most of the cases that women are going through in prison, they are just crimes of maybe the stomach because of poverty. They stole something and they're spending so much time in prison because they can't really articulate themselves in court. They can't speak. They are so scared to speak. This is why we want to start to embark on this program to train paralegal women in prison so that they can train the other women to be able to defend themselves. It's so sad that women have left children outside. They're spending time inside, 5 years, 6 years. I spent 7 years going to and from court, which was unheard of. I remember one of my co-accused left a little baby at home, and the grandmother was cooking beans. It poured on the body and the child died. After 7 years, she was acquitted to go out. Can you imagine somebody spending 7 years and just to be acquitted that she's got no case to answer, and yet she lost a child? There are women who gave birth to children by the entrance because it takes time for the wardens to open the cell for you to access medical facilities. Women that are being incarcerated, pregnant women. Right now, we are lobbying our president to stop incarcerating women that are pregnant, women that are breastfeeding, and children. Children haven't committed a crime. Why are they keeping children in prison? And in prison in Zambia, there is no a place where they can isolate the women and the breastfeeding and the pregnant women. You are all packed up together with the mental patients. It's something so terrible. Prison
Thank you.
really, yeah.
Thank you, Beatrice. That is really, I can already see commonalities with the situation that we heard in Trinidad, as far as having very long times before trial. It's of course a challenge, like Baz mentioned. It's a challenge everywhere. It's a challenge in the US as well. As well as the incarceration of women who are pregnant and their babies to an extent, right? So I'd love to move on to Daniel and to ask about women prisons in Brazil, but also and especially the situation of trans women in Brazilian prisons.
Olá, vamos lá. Hoje, infelizmente, consegue todo mundo me ouvir?
Sim, a gente escuta. Pode continuar.
Então, hoje, infelizmente, eu pertenço ao país que mais mata trans e travestis.
Today, sadly, I belong to the country that that has the highest rate of murder of trans people in the world.
Hoje, como eu digo, eu sou uma pessoa trans destransicionada exatamente por causa do cárcere.
And yes, when I say that I'm a trans person who got the transition, is because of the violence that I suffered while I was in prison.
E eu vou trazer um pouco da realidade das pessoas trans no cárcere hoje.
And today I'm going to talk about a little bit of the reality of trans people incarcerated in Brazil.
O Brasil possui cerca de 919 mil pessoas privadas da liberdade hoje.
Brazil has around 900,000 people incarcerated,
de acordo com o Departamento Penitenciário Nacional.
according to the Department of Prisons, Prison Administration in Brazil.
Por mais que esses dados foram retirados do ar em 2019,
even though the data was removed from being available to the society in 2019,
estima-se que cerca de 1,3% deste número que eu disse acima tem um total de pessoas em penitenciárias nacionais que sejam pessoas LGBTs, ou seja, pessoas trans.
Of the 900,000 people, there's an estimate of 1.3% that are trans people who are incarcerated in the country.
A gente observa que normalmente essas pessoas trans elas são presas pelo crime de furto ou normalmente de roubo.
Yeah, and we estimate that most of this population who are incarcerated, they are there, and the crime they committed is because they were stealing something.
E em alguns casos tem influência ao tráfico de drogas.
And it's usually related to drug trafficking as well.
E que, pela nossa realidade, a gente também entende o quanto hoje esse sistema ele é mortífero em questão da identidade, da transfeminilidade dentro das unidades prisionais masculinas.
And we also need to take into consideration how the system, the way it is right now, it kills the identity of the trans women who are incarcerated inside male prisons.
Aqui no estado do Rio, por exemplo, há uma presença de, pelo menos em 26 unidades, mais de 90 pessoas trans em regime fechado.
Right now, in the state of Rio, in 26 prison units in the entire state. Amiga, pode repetir, por favor, o dado?
Então, tem 26 unidades masculinas e entre as 26, 4 unidades dessas, em regime fechado, tem 90 pessoas trans.
Yeah, so in total of 26 prison units in Rio, out of the 26, in 4, there's an estimate of 90 trans women in the closed regime.
E nas demais unidades tem entre 50 a 60 pessoas trans.
In the other ones, there are around 50 to 60 trans people.
Entre uma das questões que a gente entende como violação de direito para as pessoas trans aqui no Brasil é a questão do uso do nome social, a falta da identificação como uma identidade de gênero legítima.
And one of the violences that we see inside the prison system in Brazil is, first of all, not recognizing the gender of the person and not using their names and only using their dead names.
Eu sempre digo para as pessoas que visitam unidades prisionais que todas as vezes que chegarem dentro de uma unidade masculina,
And what I always tell people is that every time you go to a prison, to a male prison,
que pergunte sobre a existência de pessoas trans.
that you should ask about the existence of trans people inside that prison unit.
Pois, infelizmente, nós, como pessoas trans, somos invisibilizadas dentro da nossa identidade transfeminina, dentro da corporalidade masculina, por propósito do próprio Estado.
Because unfortunately, we are, as trans people, we go through an invisibility process done by the state as well inside male prison units.
Essas meninas, quando saem do sistema prisional, elas não têm nenhum apoio, nenhum programa de reinserção social.
And these women, these girls, when they go out, when they come home from prison, they don't have almost any support, any educational or reentry support.
E todos os programas que tem são os programas muito pequenos que não conseguem fazer trabalhos efetivos com essas mulheres.
And the ones that exist, they're very small, so it's hard to get an effective, sustainable project.
Levando novamente para o caminho dos delitos, de cometerem crimes ou irem para a margem da prostituição e voltarem novamente para as prisões.
So they end up going back again to committing the same crimes that they did before, or having to rely on prostitution as a way of survival.
Assim como eu entendo que a realidade das mulheres cisgênera dentro das prisões femininas é muito difícil,
even though I know that the reality of cisgender women inside women's prison is very complicated,
mas precisamos falar sobre um corpo que também é invisibilizado dentro das unidades masculinas, que são essas mulheres trans.
but we also need to talk about those bodies of trans women who are incarcerated inside male prisons.
Então, hoje eu penso que todas as minhas políticas e todos os programas que eu tenho desenvolvidos têm sido para criar uma visibilidade dessa identidade transfeminina dentro dessas unidades e fora delas também.
So the work that I'm doing right now and the projects that I want to do in the future, I want to center them into creating and providing visibility for trans women, both inside and outside the prison system.
E eu quero agradecer o programa por ter trago essa pergunta, e é isso, que a gente possa cada dia mais visibilizar as pessoas trans dentro e fora do cárcere. Encerro.
And I want to thank the program for bringing this question, and that we'll be able to keep talking about this in the future and bringing this topic to the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That is such a crucial topic. We talk about women who are incarcerated and how women prisons are underserved. But of course, we should not forget the reality of the many women who are incarcerated in male prisons, and how that has its incredible, formidable challenges. The potential for violence, including, like you described, the violence of not using people's names, of forcing people into a different gender than what they are, and further limiting their access to services, to programs. So thank you for that testimony. And before we move on to my next question, I'd love to hear some thoughts from the audience, as to read out some thoughts that the audience has put in the chat. So we have someone from South Africa that continued to talk about her sister, challenges with access to computers and laptops, and so that is something that we're facing again, that I've seen here in the US as well, and that I know is a challenge across the world, getting this technology, that connectivity that can help you support programming. And we have another woman from Uganda who mentioned, I'm just going to read what she put in the chat. I work with incarcerated people, as incarcerated women in Uganda as a paralegal and as a tutor to law students in prisons. And my experience is that almost all of the women in our prison are kept with their children until they are 5 years old. The majority are charged with crime of passion, especially as reactions to gender-based violence. And it is really refreshing to hear that there are platforms like this that strive to talk about the injustices that women suffer, on top of it being deprived of their freedom. So thank you so much. And I think that is a great segue to my next question. That is, we talked about the impact of criminal legal system on women, including trans women. But can we talk, we know that anytime you're incarcerating a person, you're having an impact on that person, but also on their community. Women are mothers, they're providers, they are activists in their communities. So by incarcerating a woman, you're really affecting entire families and communities. I know several people already talked about the incarceration of babies and toddlers and children with mothers, as well as the impact that incarcerating mothers has on their families. And I'd love to hear more from our panelists on how the incarceration of women impacts other people in their circles and in their communities.
Right, I'll go. All right. Incarceration not only affects the individuals behind bars, but also has far-reaching consequences for their families and the communities they live in. So when women are incarcerated, their children are often left behind, facing numerous challenges. Incarceration disrupts the vital bond between mother and children, leading to emotional distress, behavioral problems, and development delays. The loss of a primary caregiver can plunge families into poverty, as mothers often provide. Children of incarcerated parents often face discrimination and social isolation, which can negatively impact their self-esteem and future opportunities. Children who have experienced parental incarceration are more likely to become involved in the criminal justice themselves. The costs associated with female incarceration, such as healthcare and childcare for children, put a strain on community resources. Incarceration disrupts family structures and social networks, weakening the fabric of communities. It is crucial that we address the disappropriate impact of incarceration on women, its devastating consequences for children and communities. By investing in early intervention programs, we can do better, because in Trinidad and Tobago, our population in the women prison is a little over 100, and the men population is over 5,000. And if we could focus more in the women prison, where we could have some form of control, where we could start to get rid of these women in the prison, it shouldn't be that hard compared to the 5,000. So why are they making it so hard on these women, to access bail? They can see the children, because I know women, and see the trend in years, 10 years, 15 years. As Sunday for Mother's Day had an article where 3 women is expressing how being disconnected from their children affected them in prison. So why it's so hard for a mother to see their children? Because they only see their children once a year. Why not happening every week? Why only on Mother's Day they're inviting the children to come into the prison to see their mothers? So it is a workable number to work with. It's only 100, and compared to the 5,000. So that is my take on that question.
Thank you.
Just to add on what Nicholas has been sharing, talking about In my past, I used to train women on job readiness, to how to find jobs and how to get jobs. And the interesting thing that I always find between women who were in incarceration and released is that the stigma after they've been released stays longer. And it's kind of like a stain that is very, very dirty for a man, and it is far more dirty for a woman. And for people to associate with women who has been in prison, you kind of like staining yourself again. So it's not just the community, but the families as well, because the families, they do not want to be seen as a family of a woman who was imprisoned. So that's one of the exclusion, and that affects the woman's stigma. It affects the woman's self-esteem, self-worth, and that can also perpetrate in terms of that can build up to make wrong decisions. Trying to fit in, not to live your life as you are supposed to be. Most women that I've come across with, they are dealing with issues of trying to bring their families back together, of which they've been separated from them for a very long time. And you find that, again, it's even difficult for even their own children to see them as the mothers, because they don't have anything to show up except a prison record. So that alone, it also kills the person's self-worth, and then you need now to live according to the approval of other people, wanting to show up so that you can be able to be that mother. Now you leave the basics of who you are. So that has been like a great challenge that I've experienced for women, not only now in the community, but also far in the workplace. When somebody knows that a woman has been in prison, as I said, the stain is very bad for a man. It is also becomes very, very darker for a woman. When people start to understand that you've been in prison for such and such a crime, they tend to de-associate themselves from you, So it is not an easy journey for a woman, We've got a saying in South Africa that says, "Wathinta abafazi, wathinta imbokodo." You strike a woman, you strike a rock, So we understand that women are the pillars, are the backbone of our countries, But the challenge that they face after imprisonment, it's far-reaching. It's really bad. So thank you.
I just want to add too that two of our fellows, including Nora, who was supposed to be with us today, but I'm sure something urgent and governmental came up, as Nora is working in government now. We're very proud of her. But two of our Global Freedom Fellows, Nora as well as Evie Ponder, both gave birth while incarcerated. And Nora was, and I'm sure she would have shared, hopefully we will fit her into another webinar because we could all listen to Nora talk all day. She is a powerhouse. But Nora was very active in the fight against shackling of women during childbirth in Argentina, which is a practice that happens still all over the world, including right here in the US. And the other thing that's also worth noting is that all over the world, you have, children being impacted by this plague that is mass incarceration. There are studies that show that this is even more harmful to a child than the death of a parent, is the incarceration of a parent. And yet there are so few, or in the US, we have several INN partners that do this work, as well as in Latin America, NENAPES is a partner there that's focusing on this. We Got Us Now is an organization here in the US that supports children with incarcerated parents in this issue. But almost everywhere else, you don't have even a single organization. I know of one in the entire continent of Africa that really focuses on the needs of children with incarcerated parents. So it's a tremendous need and a lack in the space.
Absolutely, thank you. And I think that as we have been saying, the consequences are far-reaching and also go well beyond the time when you are physically incarcerated. The stigma of being incarcerated persists it can change the way you present, and it continues to shape your families, your children. So I agree. It is very important that we talk about those far-reaching consequences that go well beyond the moment in which we are incarcerating a person. Beatrice, I saw you unmuted yourself. Do you want to add?
Yes, thank you, Baz. Thank you, moderator. Thank you, MT. What you said about women in incarceration is just unbelievable. It's got far-reaching consequences on families because a mother is the head of the house. A mother looks after not only the husband as well as the children. The stigma is what is killing women. You come out of prison, you can't be employed by government. We are fighting for women to get back to their professionals. They can't be employed. You come out, the children are so stigmatized, such that since I came back from South Africa, I haven't spoken to my daughter in the US. I don't know what is happening. I was saying I'll try and reach out for someone to reach out to her. I don't know whether she's ashamed of me. It is terrible for women. It is terrible. The stigma, you know, you incarcerate a woman, you incarcerate a whole generation. To get out of that, it's so difficult. We really have to look at ways in which we can save women from incarceration. Right now, we are lobbying government to see if they can give alternative sentences to women. Maybe you save outside prison for the sake of the children. There are so many street kids, ex-inmates' children. There are so many children that are in orphanages and they are being exported out of this country without anybody knowing because the mother is in prison. It's so terrifying. It's so unbearable as a mother. Really, I think something should be done to save nations, because you save a woman, you save a nation, really. There are so many disgruntled children out there because their mothers have been incarcerated for a simple crime that they committed, which they could have saved outside prison. So right now, my focus is to lobby, to fight for women, to know, to learn how to speak for them, defend themselves in court. This is why we say thank you, Dr. Baz. This Kenan's coming to Zambia is going to change a lot of things. We want the women to have the confidence to be able to speak in court. They don't have to be incarcerated only because they were told that you just accept your crime so that you go back to prison and save your sentence, then you go home. Really. Thank you.
You are muted, Kiara.
Oh, thank you. I was just saying thank you for sharing your also for sharing your story. I want to give the word to Daniel. And yeah, I also saw you raise your hand. So.
Eu queria falar sobre algumas coisas muito importantes,
I wanted to talk about some very important things,
principalmente enfatizando no que a Beatriz disse sobre a questão desse lugar da conservação da mulher.
mostly also reaching what Beatrice was talking about preserving the women that is incarcerated.
Hoje, eu trabalhando com os filhos das mulheres que são sobreviventes do cárcere, eu tenho percebido muito o quanto a gente precisa preservar todos os processos de gestação da mulher.
And right now that I'm working with kids whose parents are incarcerated, I notice how important it is to preserve and protect the woman when it's pregnant and when it's giving birth.
Quando eu era criança, minha mãe dizia uma coisa para mim,
When I was a child, my mom used to say
que antes de eu querer gerar algo nesse mundo, eu precisava valorizar uma mulher, porque eu só era quem eu sou por causa de uma mulher, porque eu vim de uma mulher.
Before I want to create or generate anything in this world, I need to think about and preserve the woman because I came from a woman.
Então, que a gente consiga compreender que o período de gestação da mulher não é somente quando ela gera aquela criança, é no todo o processo, assegurar todos os direitos dela.
That when we talk about the women being pregnant and having the child and giving birth, it's not only about guaranteeing the safety during the process of giving birth, but the before and after as well.
Porque uma das coisas que esse patriarcado quer é que essas mulheres não consigam gerar seus filhos.
Because one of the things that we see the patriarchy wants is that women won't be able to have their babies.
Por que eu digo isso? Hoje eu pertenço ao país que, em quarto lugar, é o país que mais encarcera mulheres.
And I say this, taking into consideration that Brazil is the fourth country in the world with the highest incarceration rate of women.
Hoje, atualmente, a gente tem 42 mil mulheres encarceradas aqui no Brasil.
In Brazil, we have 42,000 incarcerated women.
E todas presas, a maioria delas, por políticas de drogas.
Yeah, and the vast majority of them are incarcerated because of drug policy, of how drug policy is in Brazil.
74% dessas mulheres são mães.
And 74% of those 42,000 are mothers.
E 64% dessas mulheres são negras aqui no Brasil.
And 64% of them are black.
E hoje a gente tem 20% de mulheres grávidas dentro das unidades prisionais.
And out of the total of incarcerated women, 20% of them are pregnant.
A gente consegue ter a percepção o quanto esse projeto de aniquilar esse processo de gestação das mulheres tem sido tão grave em todos os países.
And then with all this scenario, we can see how bad the situation is as a project to annihilate the life of the women, especially the ones who are pregnant.
Em relação à comunidade das pessoas trans,
And in relation to the trans community,
principalmente as mulheres,
mostly trans women,
elas também se desvinculam muito dos seus familiares desde o início do processo de sua transição, e o cárcere ele potencializa esse processo.
especially for trans women, we see how they are expelled from their families. This process of being far from their families start when they come out as a trans person, and becoming incarcerated exacerbates this even more.
Que possamos lutar para que mulheres cis e mulheres trans se unam em todas as causas, em todos os programas de iniciativas de políticas de execução penal.
And that we could, with that said, that we can fight and advocate for cisgender women and trans women. They can get together to fight for the rights of women in general related to prison-related issues.
Porque uma coisa eu posso dizer, nós não sabemos a dor do útero, mas entendemos a dor de ser mulher dentro da sociedade. Porque nascer uma mulher já é difícil. Construir uma mulher na sociedade é muito mais.
Because one thing I can say, I don't know the pain and the struggle of having a uterus, but I know the pain and the struggle of being a woman in society. And that's something that we need to relate to and getting together as women.
Que todos os dias possamos acolher mulheres e dar a dignidade que elas merecem.
That every day we're able to welcome women and giving them the dignity that they deserve.
Thank you. Thank you. That's so important and so well said. I think we want to build alliances that are truly inclusive of all women to fight for the rights and the representation of all women who are incarcerated, whether they are in women's prisons, whether in male prisons, and everybody can stand to gain from such an alliance. I want to move on. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, first of all, to all the panelists for sharing their thoughts, their perspective, their work. I want to leave some time to questions from the audience. We have a wonderfully engaged audience. I want to read another comment from someone from Nigeria who outlined very clearly the challenges that are in women's prisons, including limited resources and amenities, including clear water, nutritious food, proper sanitation services, stigmatization and social isolation, limited educational and vocational opportunities. So really all that we have been discussing and more. And I also there is a question from someone in the audience about whether the panelists could talk a little bit more about healthcare or lack of healthcare and health issues for incarcerated women, including trans women in prison. I think that's such an excellent question. We talked a lot about the challenges of pregnancy in prison, but obviously women's health goes well beyond pregnancy. And so as we talk about the conditions of women, including trans women in prisons, I would really welcome your thoughts on health and healthcare for women, incarcerated women.
Thank you. Do I go ahead?
Yeah.
Okay. Healthcare is a non-starter in female correctional services. I think in Zambia, countrywide, there's not even one clinic in the female section. I gave an example when I was in South Africa of a woman who gave birth to a baby right by the entrance before the officers could come and open for her. Unfortunately, she died 3 days later. That baby, as we are speaking now, she's being fostered in an orphanage. Healthcare is a non-starter. Women need healthcare because they are mothers. They are carrying that precious thing, a baby, who will one day be president. Healthcare is terrible. It's a non-starter in correctional services. Here in Zambia, not one female prison has got a clinic, a health facility for women. You have to move a distance to go to male section to be attended to by a doctor or a physician. It's terrible. We need to look into that. That's the worst part, actually. The worst part is healthcare. There's no healthcare in female correctional facilities.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Speak of under-resourcing, not even one clinic in women's prisons in Zambia. That is really harrowing.
Not one. Not
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Nicholas, I feel we haven't heard from you as much. And I know you work in a women's prison in Trinidad. So
Health.
yeah.
The issue of health is really deplorable when in 2024 when there's still a woman using buckets instead of toilets in cells. The food, it's not healthy. I've been there for 15 years and it's not the best food. In terms of more sunlight and activities, because you're locked down for 22 hours a day, and we could do more with that time rather than just we are worth more than just locking us in a cell. So that is a main factor where recreation is concerned, more expanding in mind, where you just have person locked in a cell when they could use them to develop themselves in terms of education and skills and trade. And as the time go past, because the judiciary is very slow, so what do we do with all this time that we have on our hand? And they're just putting us in a cell, and especially the women, they are rich in talent, they are rich in gifts. Women will make anything out of nothing, and what do we do with this? So health is like a main issue in Trinidad and Tobago because we are like the richest Caribbean island throughout the whole region. And you have women using buckets and not toilets Why is that? And in a facility of 100 women, not so hard to install toilets in a prison compared to the 5,000 men I tell you about. You know, water is an issue there, where women had to store water. You know, as a female, you will need to cleanse yourself more than a male. You know, so health is a serious issue in Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you. Thank you. That is such a great point that we talk about health. There are so many components to health, sanitation, wellness, access to clean water, access to sunlight, access to exercise are all fundamental components of health. Daniel, I would love to, Baz,
I just wanted to say something quickly. I wanted to say, by the way, we've got no power at home. I'm right now at the prison, the second largest prison. I'm in a female officer's house. She let me in. I hope she won't be in trouble for this, because power doesn't go at the prison. So I came here to have this meeting on the laptop. I'm inside the house of a female officer. I just want to say thank you. I'm right next to the second biggest prison in Zambia. So I asked her, she joined Zambia prison while I was already inside. So I just wanted to acknowledge and to say thank you. Thank you to her. Yes.
Thank you on our behalf as well for supporting you so you can join us.
Yes.
I just wanted to jump in and share a bit of positive news in this space before I'm sure that Daniel has thoughts on both the question in the chat and the question of healthcare, but which is that Colombia is an example of a country that we can feel excited about in the space of, well, many things, I think, but particularly around incarcerated women. As of 2020, a law, there has been a massive change in legislation that was actually co-written by a dear friend of INN, Claudia Cardona, who's a friend to the fellowship, a formerly incarcerated leader in Colombia, whereby women who are heads of households are essentially guaranteed alternative to incarceration. So women with children who meet certain criteria. So they are really decarcerating the female prison population in Colombia right now through this legislation. It's incredibly complicated to carry it all out, of course, but it is happening, and that's a beautiful thing to see. And then it's also worth noting that there's a number of fairly high-profile facilities that are holistic facilities for women with their children that look nothing like prisons, that are cropping up around the world. One of them I actually wrote about in my book in Australia, Baronia. It's worth looking at. And there's one called Hope Street in the UK that's very, very new. That's also doing some great work around creating really a holistic healing center for women and their children. So there are some good things happening in the space. It's sometimes worthwhile to remind us of that, even amid all the despair of so much of what we've heard today.
Thank you. Absolutely. That is such a great point. And some of the great things that are happening, the panelists in this call are making that happen by providing education, support, advocacy for women. So in a moment, I want to hear from Daniel, and then my last question for you all, so you can start thinking about it, is what are, in fact, we heard about the programs that you're bringing, but what are some of the successes that you can share from the work that you all have been doing? And if there was one additional thing, one single thing that you could change in for women in the criminal legal systems in your countries, what would that be? So 2 things I'm going to ask: successes and one thing that you're working on that you want to change. But before that, I want to give the floor to Daniel for their thoughts on on the healthcare of women in prison.
Então, a realidade hoje de mulheres dentro do sistema prisional na questão de saúde
The reality of incarcerated women when it comes to healthcare
são as mesmas realidades de privação de direito
is the same reality of the denial of rights, of general rights, of other rights.
Muitas dessas mulheres não conseguem ter os direitos básicos, como os absorventes, como às vezes alimentação adequada, às vezes local para dormir.
Yeah,
ter
most of the
colchões.
time, the women who are incarcerated, they don't have proper access to tampons or proper access to a place to sleep or even to proper food.
Visando também a falta de priorização de mulheres trans dentro das unidades prisionais em questão do acesso aos direitos à saúde.
And also not even considering, which is even worse, the lack of access of health services for trans women who are also incarcerated in male prisons.
Entendendo que esses modus operandi é sempre desumanizador,
That the way this works is all the time dehumanizing,
onde coloca essas mulheres em situações, as mulheres trans que têm silicone industrial, passaram por alguma cirurgia em questão da estrutura corporal, elas têm infecções sérias dentro do sistema prisional.
and also considering women, trans women who have been through surgeries for breast implant, for instance, or for other type of surgeries, they got infections while they're incarcerated, for example, they don't have the proper treatment.
Enquanto eu estava preso, eu cheguei a vivenciar uma situação onde a minha amiga, que é uma pessoa trans, teve os seios estourado, que começou a infeccionar dentro do sistema.
So for my personal experience while I was incarcerated, one of my friends, who is also a trans woman, her breast implant opened and she got an infection.
Em algumas situações também eu consegui enxergar que em vários momentos a prioridade de atendimento eram dos homens e não das mulheres trans, e essas mulheres trans às vezes não eram atendidas a tempo e acabavam chegando a óbito dentro das celas.
And while I was incarcerated, I saw that the priority was always given to men, and that trans women sometimes they wouldn't even get the access to the health care provider system inside the prison. Some of them would even die.
Hoje a gente tem uma resolução, a resolução 348, do dia 13 de outubro de 2020.
Today we have a resolution in Brazil, number 348 of October 2020.
Que assegura alguns direitos básicos de mulheres trans dentro das unidades.
Which guarantees some basic rights for incarcerated trans women.
E mesmo assim a gente sabe que é muito violado. Uma das questões que mulheres trans passam é na questão do transporte, porque as unidades prisionais, normalmente, as unidades médicas normalmente é em outra unidade prisional.
And we see that the resolution is not respected most of the time. One of the biggest challenges as well is it's related to transportation. So some of the healthcare units, they're not in the prison where the person is incarcerated, so they need to be transported to that healthcare location.
E no período desse transporte, elas são agredidas e violentadas por esses guardas. E muitas dessas mulheres trans optam em não pedir em nenhum momento a emergência ou atendimento à saúde.
And during the transportation, most of the time they're violated by the people who are working in the prison system, who are men. And so with that situation, most of the trans women, they don't even ask to go to the health clinic, even if it's an emergency, because they don't want to be violated during the transportation.
A falta do acesso aos hormônios, que é dentro da transição, aonde também a gente pensa que configura isso como uma forma de violência contra a identidade de gênero transfeminina dessas mulheres.
We also see the lack of providing hormonal treatment. Some of the women, they started before going to prison. So we see that the prison system does not provide that. We also see this as a violation to their gender identity.
Em 5 anos que eu fiquei de prisão, eu vi mais de 7 mulheres trans morrerem na minha frente.
While I was incarcerated for 5 years, I saw more than 7 trans women died in prison.
No meu país, você acorda se perguntando se realmente você quer ser mulher.
So in my country, you wake up asking yourself if you really want to be a woman.
Então, eu digo muito que hoje estar dentro desse corpo masculino aprisionado é exatamente para não sofrer essas violências aqui fora.
So when you see me in this male body right now, it works as a shield to not be violated anymore as a trans woman.
É isso.
That's it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your very powerful story and your testimony from the time when you were incarcerated and how it continues to impact you. We only have a very few minutes left, and I want to go around really quickly with a story of success that you can leave us with, and a story of the work that one single thing that you're focusing on among the many elements that you're fighting for. Beatrice, I'm going to start from you. Really 1 minute.
A success story is what we are just about to do to empower women, paralegals, to be able to defend themselves with confidence as they go to court. They don't belong to prison. And we are fiercely fighting for women incarceration, mass incarceration. A woman, a pregnant woman, a breastfeeding woman, a mother, women don't belong to prison. They belong out there to take care of their families. And really, incarceration of women is something we are fighting for. We are lobbying government to stop incarcerating women because it destroys families, it destroys homes, it destroys a nation. A woman is a mother, and they don't belong in prison. And the success stories, I was serving death penalty, and I was fighting death penalty against the death penalty. Even though it's been abolished, we are lobbying government to complete it, to ratify that death penalty, that it should be completely out of it. You can imagine to be on death penalty, not to know whether you see tomorrow. The president has done a good thing. We thank God. He's abolished death penalty. Right now, we are lobbying Parliament to ratify that so that it comes into law. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Nicholas.
My journey is basically working with everybody who coming out of prison and giving them that access to education. As Basil say, education, not incarceration. So for me, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. So my success is basically to really change people's situations and people's lives. You know, I wear a lot of hats, so I don't really focus on myself, but more on others. You know, and to me that means a lot. That kind of mends my heart from being cool, because I've been impacted by the system, and it really changed me. And now I start to see the light, you know, of being a good person and helping others, especially those who been impacted by the system like myself. So my success is really to really help and change people's lives and situations. So like for example, for the past few months, me and Baz been actually getting employment for some of the guys, you know, and I just offer connection, people we might know, even housing for some of the guys, you know, and to me that means a lot. So like Basil always say, like when somebody messages and say, I'm on my way to work, you know, it warms the heart, and it also warms my heart to know, well, a few weeks ago or a few months ago since he been in not working, and now he messages us, he on his way to work, you know, and that alone means a lot to everything we do right now.
Thank you. That's really important. Providing everything, education. I know someone in the chat also mentioned education as a way to support human rights. Education itself, of course, is a human right, and it can lead to women advocating for themselves to advance their rights. I want to give the floor to Daniel for some final thoughts on successes in your work. Daniel, I hear you just established or more formalized your organization, so that's also something I would pinpoint as a success.
I'll just translate to him because the WhatsApp call, I mean, it didn't work in the end for this last part. Ela tá perguntando, amigo, se tu puder contar uma história de sucesso e algo que tu melhoraria no Brasil, levando em consideração agora que tu começou o teu próprio instituto, né?
Então, uma das conquistas, além da criação do meu instituto, tem sido esse projeto do apoio educacional com os filhos das mulheres sobreviventes do cárcere.
One of the success stories that I wanted to share, besides creating the institute, is the education support program that I'm giving and helping and organizing with the kids of incarcerated women.
E como eu fui essa pessoa que foi também transformado pela a transformação social do que os livros têm, a gente está com um projeto de criação da primeira biblioteca popular internacional na favela do Mandela, que é uma das favelas daqui do estado do Rio de Janeiro.
And also considering myself someone that got transformed by education, by reading books, and by the power that books have, I'm also in the process of creating the first international public library in the Mandela favela here in Rio.
Inclusive, estamos com uma campanha de arrecadação de livros infantis e jogos pedagógicos.
And including, we are currently doing a campaign to raise donations and funds to get books and educational games for kids.
Eu estou na procura de recursos para todos esses tipos de eixo, mas também eu estou na criação agora, junto com o James, em parceria com o James, a biblioteca em parceria com Valdemar, da Argentina, e o podcast vai ser em parceria com o James. A gente está na criação para a gente poder discutir e falar um pouco mais sobre a realidade de pessoas trans dentro das prisões.
So the library, the project of the library is in partnership with Valdemar, who is a fellow from this year's cohort of GFF. And we also have a project of creating a podcast to talk about the reality of the prison system in Brazil. And this is in partnership with James, who is also a fellow from this year's cohort of the Global Freedom Fellowship.
E uma das coisas do que eu poderia, se eu quisesse mudar dentro do sistema, o que eu mudaria é que ao invés de encarcerar, que dessem livro para as pessoas.
And one of the things that I would change, if I could change something in the Brazilian reality, would definitely be not to incarcerate, but to give them books.
Thank you. Education, not incarceration. That I feel is the perfect conclusion for the first of 4 webinars that we are doing together, the Petey Greene Program and INN, the Global Freedom Fellowship. I just want to take 1 second again to thank all of our panelists, thank Baz and MT for their participation in this webinar. Thank our interpreters who did such a fantastic job despite all the technical challenges and improvised. Our next webinar will be on July 16, the same time as this time, which for us in New York is 12:30, but I know it's different times for everybody, and it will be on legal empowerment and mass incarceration. So I hope I will see you all and many more